Some studies show actually, if you do something like one time, you should be able to pick up enough about that particular activity to where you know the right types of questions to ask in a conversation. What's up, guys? This is another episode where I am going to give you advice on approaching people. I've gotten a lot of questions about that, so I might make a series out of this. So these are ideas of different ways you can approach people if you're looking for a job, if you just want to meet people. There's a lot of people out there that have a little bit of social anxiety, including myself, man. I went through this stuff when I was a kid. I was a lot more introverted than I am now. Still feel like I'm introverted sometimes. Like, seriously, I go through periods where I just want to be alone for a long period of time. Then there's other days where I just want to go out and meet everyone. One thing that is tough is keeping conversation going with people that you are just, when you just meet someone and you don't know much about them, you never know what they're gonna be about or whatnot. So, first you want to listen so you can ask the right questions. That is the importance of a conversation, is listening intently, right? What I think is a good idea for people to practice is what I call like a random practice day. This is something you can do like once a month or more than that, once a week if you wanted. Basically, it is getting experience of trying different things. Some studies show actually, if you do something like one time, you should be able to pick up enough about that particular activity to where you know the right types of questions to ask in a conversation. For instance, if I met somebody that was really into scuba diving, I've only scuba dived once or twice, maybe. But just by doing it once or twice, I can already relate a little bit to that person. One of my favorite quotes is by Miyamoto Musashi. If you keep up with my channel, you probably get that. I am definitely a fan of Miyamoto Musashi. Miyamoto Musashi has a quote that says, "From one thing, know 10,000 things." The closest thing I'd be to a master at would be photography. And I've lived enough and been through enough in the photography world to understand that no matter what you're studying and no matter what you want to be a master in, whatever you consider or you are considered a master, you will always have to continue to work at that thing. There is no master. My other favorite quote is, "Only the true master knows that he will always be a student." So what I think that means is, for instance, in photography, if I were to say I think I'm a master and I don't continue practicing and I just stick with doing the same thing, you will fall away. You'll never get hired. Your style will disappear. Just like in photography, there's trends and styles and techniques that all kind of change. Things are always changing, so you have to stay on top of the game no matter what. Same thing with jiu-jitsu. So like most people in jiu-jitsu would think a black belt is like a master, right? Or they've hit like a certain level, a black belt's a black belt. Well, one of the most common things I've heard almost every black belt I've ever met or seen get a black belt, I've heard many of them say, "So it begins," like it's almost like they're just starting over. It's just a whole new, nothing really changes, it's just a different belt that holds up their gi. So you're always going to be learning, you're always going to be changing. But the whole point of this video is to kind of give you motivation to try multiple different things. And the reason I told you the quote about Miyamoto Musashi, "Know one thing to know 10,000 things," is because just by knowing that in a conversation, you're talking to someone, you understand that they have to constantly work at whatever they're doing to become, super experienced or a master at it. So if I say I'm going to a party and I know that so-and-so is a scuba diver, I could go watch some scuba diving YouTube videos or something and get some sort of knowledge, and that's great, that's better than nothing. But nothing beats an experience. Like, people want to hear experiences. They don't want to hear about your YouTube video that you watched. Maybe this one, they might want to know about this one. But experiences speak louder than videos. Let's just put it that way. So, and this brings me to another thing. From my experience, you have to constantly be learning and how things change, and the younger generations always seem to know more, or they learn all the little tricks quicker. And I mean, it's just part of evolution. We get us older guys get outdated quickly. And that goes for jiu-jitsu as well, because I personally witnessed a black belt in jiu-jitsu show up at a gym that I was training at in New York City. And I witnessed him, get his butt kicked by like blue belts. It showed visibly. He was visibly upset and hurt. I mean, that's a big part of jiu-jitsu though, being humbled all the time. But that just goes right along what I'm saying. It's like, if you think you're a master, you better check yourself, no matter what you're practicing, no matter what you're doing. As soon as you think you're a master, you will be humbled very soon. That being said, go out and try something new. You never know when you're going to meet people that have experienced, or people that love doing all these different activities. Especially if you're meeting people on the street, you're meeting people at different parties and whatnot. At least you'll have something to bring to the conversation. So my main advice is start a random practice day. Random practice day is developing new skills. And not to mention, this is one of those things like, when you're practicing something new, it kind of forces you to be super present, because when you're learning something, you're paying full attention instead of like doing something that you do all the time and you start daydreaming about, something that happened at work or your girlfriend or something like that. Every time you're learning something new, you're creating new neural pathways in your brain. The way it was explained to me, or the way I read about it in a book called Mind Body Mastery. Let me find out who wrote that book. What is it? Dan Millman. This book. I haven't read this in years. I thought it was really amazing the way he explains this. He explains new practices, learning new things, especially physical movements, learning new moves in jiu-jitsu, learning how to use a new camera. All this stuff is creating new pathways in the brain. And the way he explains it is, it's almost like your brain is a forest, right? When you learn something, for instance, we all know how to walk. So you have this path through your brain that is just clear. There's no weeds in the way. It's a clear walking path. You don't even have to think about it. It's just, you just walk, right? But when you learn something new, you're going through a new path and you're having to cut weeds out of the way. The ground you're gonna have to stomp that ground down. So the more you go through this path, the wider it's gonna get, the easier it's gonna go. And that goes with different things in photography. That's why it's so important to be photographing all the time, because when you are in like a situation, say you're photographing somebody that makes you nervous, you don't want to have to think about what you're doing. You want to be able to keep a conversation going with the subject, talk to them. All the little intricate things you're doing with your camera should be second nature. And the same thing with jiu-jitsu. So if I'm doing jiu-jitsu, the only moves you really know are the ones that you don't have to think about. Don't get me wrong, there's situations where I'm sure you have to think about stuff, but for the most part, the movements you really know are just happening. That's why it's really important to be able to concentrate on your breath and things like that, and keeping yourself super present and super awake. So, I hope you guys learned something today. Get out there and practice something new. You never know who you're gonna meet. I'll see you guys again soon.